everyone that's watching right now, thank you for joining us today for this episode of Author Talk. Again, my name is Aaron Patterson, and I'm joined today by Jay Dawes, who is an associate professor of applied exercise science at Oklahoma State University. Jay has worked as an athletic performance coordinator for the university, strength and performance coach, a personal trainer, an educator. He was the NSCA 2021 Tactical Strength and Conditioning Professional of the Year. And his background has led him to write a handful of books, including the one we're going to talk about today, and that is Complete Guide to TRX Suspension Training, and this is the second edition. So after all that, welcome, Jay. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. Hey, I really appreciate you being patient with me and everybody else hanging tight. So, again, hopefully you'll get more value out of the conversation than what I can provide as far as technology skills. But nonetheless, no, thanks again for having me, Aaron. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. We've been excited about this one for a while. And now I gave a brief info, have obviously some points that we want to hit today, but everyone is always interested in the why of everything we do. So I actually want to start and see if you can tell us why you got into strength and conditioning and this profession, and how you got to where you are today. So just a little more background there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I always joke with people that I was a pretty aggressively mediocre athlete. And that was really what got my start. So when I was in junior high, I was kind of an overweight kid. And baseball was like my first love. And I wanted to play more than anything. And so I tried out with all my buddies, and I was the only one that got cut.
Oh, man.
And so just completely devastated me. But it's funny, like looking back now, those things are like those little traumas are the things that completely can change your entire life in a positive way. But
right.
You know, basically at that point, you know, it was back in the late 80s. So there wasn't really, you know, the information available now that we can get at our fingertips. So actually, believe it or not, like some of the first things I picked up were some human kinetics books. I think Don Chu's plyometric book and some of the different ones out there as far as resistance training, just trying to figure out what to do to, you know, improve my athletic performance. Yeah. And arguably, I probably did a whole lot of things wrong, but, you know, at 13, 14 years old, the good thing is that you're so anabolic that you can mess a few things up and still, you know, see some pretty decent results. But anyway, I went on, I played baseball for a couple years in college and then got injured. Okay. And, you know, at that point, I think I kind of had the realization that, you know, I really enjoyed the getting ready for the season and the preparatory portion, but maybe even more than playing. And I really got excited about helping other people make those transformations that I got to see in my own personal life, and it really just set the stage for, just an awesome, you know, career, and you know 25 years now of just you know, really getting up every day and getting to do exactly what I want to do.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's a really good example of, like you said, you kind of had a setback and you found a way to kind of correct that and progress to get to where you wanted to go. Like you said, at least playing college for a couple of years there. More specifically, how did you get more interested in this whole suspension training, TRX training? Where did that come from, and how did you kind of get thrust into writing these books here?
Yeah, so with suspension training, it was really interesting. Back in 2000, from 2007 to 2010, I actually was the education director for the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And during that time frame is when TRX was really becoming very popular. And so they had a sponsorship agreement with the NSCA and actually donated a handful of suspension training systems to the headquarters. And I think, you know, everybody kind of fell in love with them. I mean, they're really great training devices for, you know, really to achieve a whole host of different goals. And I'll never forget, it was funny, you know, because the NSCA is an organization that's really strongly based on, you know, evidence-based practice and research. We actually had a preeminent researcher come in and goes like, well, is there any research to support these? I'm like, gravity? Right. So it was, there you go. So it was one of those things. I think maybe at first some people were trying to overcomplicate it a little bit, but you know,
we do that sometimes.
Yeah, but I think, you know, the cool thing about it is just, you know, the versatility that it provided, and you know, at that point, something kind of novel and new to help people, you know, to implement in their training programs, to give them something kind of new to stimulate different types of goals that they may have, and try to help improve performance. So
right. Like you mentioned, kind of the versatility, how it has started to go in popularity. I mean, I'm a trainer. I work in a gym. We have, I don't know how many TRX suspension trainers in there for regular members to help train our clients. And really, like you said, walk into pretty much any gym, or maybe even someone's home gym, and you're going to find a TRX suspension trainer. Why do you think that's grown in popularity so much recently?
Oh, man. Probably most recently, I mean, I don't know if you know, we had this global pandemic thing that popped up a few years back. So it was funny, like I wrote the first edition this prior to that, and it was a pretty big advocate for the tool anyway, but man, when the pandemic hit, I mean, that's what a lot of my training programs got regulated to, because, I mean, fortunately, I kind of hoard gym equipment, so I had a pretty fair amount of equipment in my garage already, but just to really try and hit all the different, movements and muscle groups and things of that nature that were important for me to try and stay on track in training. It was just a great tool. And I think, especially with people in like a home environment, with that have limited equipment, it's kind of hard to find ways to train certain muscle groups, especially like, the lower back not the lower back, but the back and the hamstrings and things of that nature. And it's a very easy way to go about doing that. So that was, I think, some of the big reasons, because, again, I mean, really the only thing with the TRX you're kind of limited with is your own imagination as far as what type of training programs and workouts that you can create with it.
I think that's an excellent point. I want to get a little more into the book here specifically. Now, in the book, you lay out, obviously the different benefits of TRX suspension training, and you listed 4 things specifically. You talked about TRX suspension training as a method of improving fitness, of course, injury reduction and rehabilitation, the ease and adjustability, which you just mentioned there, and affordability and portability. Now, for the listeners and viewers, if we can, I'd like to at least touch on each of those areas, because, I mean, those are pretty big highlights there and can kind of give a full scope of exactly what you can do with the TRX suspension trainer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the cool thing about it is, like, when you're looking at training for different goals, I guess if you want to look at it from a pyramid approach, I mean, the base level for me is trying to improve overall health and well-being. And then once and that's, just simply reducing your risk of, premature sickness and death. So once we've kind of established that, then we can layer that with fitness, which is going to be your capacity. So now that you're a healthy person, now let's try and really build on that to make sure that you can do all the things in your daily life, whatever that may be, without undue fatigue. And then kind of the pinnacle of that is performance. And, performance can be really anything that means something to you. I mean, it can be, anything from elite level sport to, a lot of the tactical strength conditioning people that I work with to, just, trying to, play with your grandkids and, live life to its fullest. And those are the big things that I really kind of look at as far as those pillars. And I think that's the really interesting thing about the TRX is it allows you to hit each one of those different aspects in a variety of different ways. And, I think it's one of those things where, certainly it's not going to be a panacea for every single goal. Like if you're, a power lifter or an Olympic weightlifter, you're going to have to get under a bar eventually.
Right.
But it's a really, really good tool to kind of, unload certain movement patterns. And then in addition to that, when we have, different times in our lives where, hey, maybe it's a little bit tougher to get to the gym, or, you have that curveball thrown at you the last minute, it's a really easy tool to utilize, at home, and can kind of help you pick up that, 15 to 30 minute workout just to help maintain. So I think those are some of the big, charms in utilizing the TRX in particular. So. Okay.
Now you mentioned, obviously, if you're a power lifter, you're going to need to get under a bar a little bit. But what I found interesting, and I think I kind of already knew this before, but the book explains it a little more, that Navy SEALs actually use this to help train, obviously when they didn't have a ton of equipment around. So I think that really speaks to the versatility and exactly how much benefit you can get out of it. So what can you tell us a little bit more about that, maybe the history of it that you know about?
Yeah, originally, it was originally implemented by Navy SEALs using like webbing and things of that nature,
Okay.
just so they could have, training tools that were easily to use when they're on deployments or on operations and things of that nature. And I think, in looking at that, in order to maintain your fitness, it doesn't actually, this is going to sound kind of funny, but it doesn't take a lot to just maintain.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, if you can hit, relatively high intensities, I mean, 75, 80% or greater a couple times a week and hit those major muscle groups in a way that's going to give that stimulatory effect, you can actually preserve for a very, very long period of time, actually as doing as few as one set of 8 to 12 reps at a, high intensity or to fatigue. So, during those time frames, I mean, like in operations or, deployment or something of that nature, when you don't have access to heavy loads, you can actually do a pretty good job of maintaining your overall fitness in those situations. So, then when you do get back to maybe normal training or, whatever that may be, there's not going to be that, rapid decline that you would normally see if you're just completely stopped training altogether. So it's a really good tool. I mean, I've told my kids this before. There was one time, it was a few months back, it was about 9:30 at night. And I said, hey, I'm going to go up to the garage and get a work,out in. And they're like, God, it's so late. Like, why are you going to do that? I'm like, okay, this is the difference between motivation and commitment. and I think having a tool like that makes it a lot easier because I didn't have to, get dressed, go to the gym. And honestly, at that point, the gym was closed anyway. So it's like, this is something I can go out to the garage and do and make sure that I'm maintaining, my overall fitness level.
Okay. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I see, even if it's just regular gym goers, that they love the TRX, but they might not know all the benefits that you can get from it. And I see you smile. Probably one of the most common you see people do. They just get on it, grab the straps, and they start rowing, which is a great exercise for your back. But can you tell us more about like different types of exercises that you can do? Because I mean, for anyone that's going to pick up this book, I mean, there are full color pictures in here of about 100 different exercises that you can actually do. So if you can you go through some of those? Maybe describe like a full body workout if you were to get a full body workout from a TRX suspension trainer.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, and I think that's the thing is that, it's not necessarily rocket science. I mean, when you look at, what the muscle have to do, if you can figure out, what that muscle group does when it's contracting, then you can probably find an exercise that's going to match it with the TRX. Now, I will say this, obviously the loading paradigm is going to be a little bit different, kind of depending on, how strong you already are. I mean, if you got somebody who's really, really strong, some of the exercises may be better for either preserving fitness or for like metabolic conditioning or something of that nature. But, for the most part, you can find an exercise that's going to target, pretty much every type of muscle movement or group that you can think of. I mean, I think if you're looking at, in general terms, if you were going to go in and develop, a workout for the day, most of the time what I'll do is I'll kind of look at, 5 basic movements. So you got your upper body push pull, lower body push pull, and then something for the trunk or the core. And I think if you hit those 5 things, you're going to be sweet for the most part. I mean, you can go into, there are all kinds of auxiliary movements that you can do, like single joint and so on and so forth. But, if you hit those 5 things at least, 2-3 times a week, you're going to get some pretty significant benefit from it. So I guess, look at that. I would probably start lower body, just because, work with the muscle groups first is going to be a good look. Also, it creates that hormonal release that's going to help, with muscle growth and stimulation as well. So, probably like, a single leg squat to kind of begin with on that. From there, you can transition into kind of a suspended Romanian deadlift. From that point, I would probably go, probably like you said, your traditional, upper body pull. Traditionally for me, what I'll do is I'll do like the 90-90 row on it, to where you actually take the torso parallel to the ground, and that's going to give a little bit more resistance on that, and a little bit more of a challenge. If you want to make it more challenging, you can actually elevate the feet as well. So that's going to change that incline, and after 3 or 4 sets, it can get pretty challenging. And then from there, I'd probably go into maybe a bicycle crunch or a pike or something of that nature to kind of hit all those major groups. And then also, let me back up one because I missed the push. So upper body pushing movement, I would probably err on a suspended push-up, just because, I mean, my current strength level, that's going to help a little bit more with muscular endurance than it would maybe
Okay,
doing the chest press. Because, I think in general terms with the chest press, so that's essentially where the hands are in the straps versus the feet being in the straps and pressing. With that particular exercise, there's kind of a stability and strength are diametrically opposed. So, I mean, the more unstable you are, the less strength you're going to be able to exert. Those are things I use a little bit more for muscle stabilization and things of that nature. So if I was going to go in and lift heavy on like dumbbells or bench press or something like that, I may do that chest press first as kind of a warm up, and then go into the heavier lift just to kind of wake up those stabilizer muscles and things of that nature. But I think to your point, I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't do a lot of with the TRX is some of the prehab movements that you can do with it, and even utilizing it as kind of a dynamic warm up, if you will, where or almost kind of like a neuromuscular activation type activity. So kind of going back to what I mentioned before with like the chest press, because you're having to work harder to stabilize the shoulders, it puts a greater emphasis on those stabilizer muscles and kind of takes it off the prime movers. So then when you go to lift something a little bit heavier, it just feels like it may be a little bit more smooth. Now, I will say this, I do have some research to back that up using like Waterfield implements. I don't have a suspension trainer. I will say this, if anybody's doing a thesis or dissertation, that'd be a pretty good topic. So just hit me up there and we can talk about it.
It's a fair point. Anyone listening, if you're looking for a research topic, we just got one right there.
Exactly. We're here to serve.
That's right. No, I love your point about the stabilization. I have some athletes that I trained that, they're getting pretty strong at the bench press. So I'm talking junior high school level. And if I want to challenge them a little more, I'll put them in those TRX straps and say, hey, put your hands here, try to do a push-up, and they struggle at it a little bit. So I think that's regardless of your strength level, I mean, you can still get a really challenging workout with that. So I love that point there. Can you go into maybe a little bit of, you talked about the difference between, using it to gain strength as opposed to muscular endurance, maybe a little more metabolic conditioning. Can you talk about some of those differences in the ways that you can use the TRX?
Yeah, I mean, in short, you can use it for all the above. I think what it really gets down to is just making sure that you're using the appropriate load to stimulate each one of those individual goals. If you go, I mean, especially like, the American College of Sports Medicine and National Strength Conditioning Association, there's pretty well-established guidelines for if you want to optimize, muscle hypertrophy or strength or power. There's certain rep ranges that are going to be more suited to that and certain loads. Now certainly with hypertrophy and endurance, those are ones that are being challenged a lot more now, and you can get a wide range of benefits and a large range of repetition ranges. But in general terms, if you're looking at like strength in particular, usually you want to use relatively lower loads higher loads and more resistance. Sorry, backed up on that. So again, you're going to have to find a load that's going to allow you to get probably 6 reps or less in order to really get the most benefit from strength training. Now, certainly, 8 reps and 10, you're going to get stronger, but not to the same extent as those 6. So, what you can do in situations like that is that's where you can add like external resistance, like a weighted vest or, sandbags, kettlebells, things like that. As long as you do it in a safe and effective manner. Truthfully, that was the one thing in the first edition that I just hated is we did some kettlebell work for stabilization. Really light loads, but honestly, when I came back and looked at it later, and I think this is just how we evolve over time, I'm thinking, okay, I can see that getting out of control really, really fast with somebody who maybe, common sense isn't necessarily common practice, so I got to be careful about what I say. So in this edition, we switched things up and went to a sandbag because worst case scenario, you drop a sandbag, oh well, right? So that's one of the things that, if you're really wanting to get strong and you're a strong person, you're probably going to have to overload the system a little bit more. Now, if you're a beginner, and, maybe, not quite as well trained, 6 months or less of training or maybe even a year or less, then there's a lot of exercise on the TRX that you won't have to add additional load for a very long time because you're going to be failing in those repetition ranges are going to be more suited to developing strength and power and things of that nature.
Okay. And is that also, I'm thinking about specifically strength. If you're doing this for a little while, then you might get used to that certain movement. So you also talked about manipulating your body position and different aspects like that, as far as like making it a little more challenging.
Super quick fix. And honestly, the thing that I really love about that too, when you're working with groups of athletes, because I've had certain situations where I've had upwards of 40 to 60 athletes in a room when and it's hard to get eyes on everybody all at once, but with the TRX, at a quick glance, I mean, it's super easy to say, hey, step in or step out to adjust that intensity, and it doesn't take as much time to switching weights and things of that nature. So currently right now working with the Stillwater Police Department's training academy. And that's one of the big benefits that we have is we've got people who are at very, very different strength levels in that group. And literally with, just a few, quick cues, we can change up the intensity for them pretty darn quick. And that's a huge benefit for us, especially when time is sensitive.
Okay. What would you say is the maybe the exercise that you like the most that no one is doing with the TRX?
There's actually probably quite a few, but I think honestly, probably the things I like the most are, again, some of those prehab ones that you can do with the shoulder.
Okay.
So in there, in the book, if you look, there's a lot of different things like your ITYs, external rotation, internal rotations, that we'll use a lot with different populations, especially like your overhead throwing athletes, and honestly, first responders. Like shoulders tend to be a disaster. Especially I'm just turned 46 in October, so I can tell you definitively, like it does not get easier over time. So spending a little bit of extra time and attention in those areas prior to a workout does make a really big difference. But I think that's, again, it's a really easy way to load those muscles and, easily adjustable when you're working with groups as well. The one thing I would say with those is to definitely take caution, just because you don't want to use really heavy weights with those rehab exercises. In fact, you should be fairly lightweight that you can hit 15, 20 reps pretty easy with. Otherwise, there are certain muscle groups like, subscapularis, where if it hypertrophies, it can create a whole another downstream effect that's not good. But yeah, light loads, nice easy warm up with that before you're doing like a any kind of shoulder work really does go a long way.
Okay. In any research or anything that you did that you've done related to this, is there anything that surprised you that's come out of it, or is it just kind of supporting everything that you've been, I guess, preaching in terms of this?
I don't think there's necessarily anything that necessarily surprised me per se. I think it surprises people.
Okay.
Basically, because you look at a strap, you're like, okay, that's kind of soft. Like I need to see some metal move. But when people get in there and you manipulate body angles and things of that nature, I mean, you can get a really, really pretty, intense workout with just a few real subtle manipulations. So I think that's been the fun thing is, you'll get some people who are, some of the strongest of the strong people I've seen, and make a few little adjustments, and you can challenge just about anybody on this.
Right. I remember we had a guy in one day, and he was handling 100-pound dumbbells really easily on a bench press. And at that point, we didn't have anything above 100 pounds. So he wanted to be challenged a little more. We said, all right, try to do a push-up. And he struggled at it. Yeah. So I think that's one example of you can use an implement like this to challenge yourself in ways that you might not have thought of before.
Yeah, so, I think to your point, like, looking like, ascending sets, drop sets, like a lot of like your old traditional bodybuilding stuff can, be kind of integrated into some of this. So, a lot of times, like, we focus a little bit more on the performance side of things. But, for people who are just looking at aesthetic benefits, like there's a whole lot of different ways that you can kind of manipulate the, this tool to get the outcomes you're looking for.
Okay. Have you, you've been around, different groups that are using this. Can you speak to maybe a lot of colleges that are using this, maybe pro teams that are using this, just to kind of give people a perspective that it's not just a general population implement that you can use. It can really be used by a wide variety of people.
Oh yeah, and honestly, I'd be hard pressed to name only a few for you. Pretty much. It's funny, 15 years ago, this was a non-traditional training modality, and now it's like you walk into any gym, you're probably going to see a whole rack of them.
Right.
So it's one of those things now where, something at one point in time that was kind of considered to be, a little, avant-garde is now kind of a traditional training tool.
Right.
I would almost venture to say you would be hard pressed to walk into, a pro collegiate military facility where you won't see one at this point.
Right. Yeah, I guess where we could go with that next, you are, sounds like especially now even more invested in the tactical training.
Yeah.
Can you go through some of the specific things that you work with them on? I know you said you're working with a police department right now. So what does that look like for them?
Well, so, as you said before, just trying to develop general fitness and strength is a really big priority. However, and one of the things I probably should have hit on earlier when I say what are people not doing on it is we do a lot of mobility work with them.
Okay.
The good thing with the straps is they allow. Oh, time down on you, buddy. Oh, Aaron, can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks like we froze up a little bit, but we're good now. Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, going back. So with our police and fire in particular, like using the straps for mobility purposes is huge. Those, and we actually are getting ready to publish a research study looking at FMS scores with about 47 law enforcement officers and 47 firefighters. And I mean, not to be indelicate about it, but movement is just kind of like an abomination. Like, it's pretty bad. So, and a lot of it is, they have to spend a lot of their time in, PPE and gear that's not really conducive to anything related to health and fitness, honestly. So a lot of times what we really have to do is undo what the job does to them. And using, the TRX for some of those rehab exercises, especially like with things like upper lower cross syndrome, and some of these exercises that go along with that is huge. But then, like, just using those straps to, get a good stretch and mobility work in has been really, really beneficial. And that's, I think, again, when we say, like, what are people not doing on it, you probably don't see that a whole lot. But that's it. And I will say this, what we try to do a lot of times with that is integrate it into the workout. And in the book, I kind of hit on that a little bit because, man, I'm just like everybody else. Like, I understand that mobility work is important, but if I put it off till the end, I'm like, I'll get it later, and then I never do. So a lot of days, if we're doing like a upper body, resistance training program, we may do lower body mobility work in between sets. So that way it doesn't conflict or interfere with like production and what the training goals for the day. And then just kind of flop that. When we're doing legs, we do more upper body stretching and things like that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do definitely want to thank you for joining me. I know we had a little bit of an issue trying to get started, but perfectly okay. You were able to give a ton of really good information here. So I know that everyone that's going to watch this later on got a lot from it. So for everyone watching, everyone listening, definitely go pick up a copy of this. Excellent book. Like I mentioned earlier, there are tons of full color photos for demonstrations, excellent descriptions of every possible exercise that you could do with this. So go pick up a copy. It's on our website, us.humankinetics.com. And Jay, I will give you the last word here. You can tell everyone where they might be able to follow some of the work that you're doing, or just maybe what's up next for you.
Yeah, I was going to tell everybody, given the start on this, if you want to follow me on my tech support line, that'd be perfect. So, sorry, man. Yeah. I am officially that guy. But I mean, guys, honestly, I'm on most of the social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will say this, arguably, I'm pretty bad at just sending out my thoughts because I usually kind of have the thought process if people don't ask, they don't really want to know. So if you have things that you want to know, feel free to ask. I'm happy to contribute any way I can. Really, for me, career-wise, it's really about trying to help make people's lives better. And I think, probably the best thing that you can do is by improving their health and fitness. It doesn't only make their lives better, but it makes the lives better for everybody around them. And if there's anything I can do for you or help provide tools for you, I'm always willing to do it. So feel free to reach out. Actually, I'll give my email address too. It's jay.dawes at okstate.edu. And again, j.dawes@okstate.edu. If you didn't catch that, Google it. It pops up pretty quick.
Right, right. Do a quick Google. You can find a ton of information on here.
There you go, man.
So, but yeah, definitely. Thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you later.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good